Here we go. We are in Judges, the book of Judges. We're on chapter 5, verse 7. And we are involved in the song of Devorah. Remember, Devorah has won, Devorah and Barak have won the war through Hashem's help, of course. And now she's singing a song about this victory. So it says in verse 7, Chadlu parazom b'Yisrael chadelu. So what happened was the open cities, the Perez, an open city without a wall, it ceased. In Israel they ceased. Ad shekamti Devorah, until I, Devorah, arose. Shekamti aim b'Yisrael. I arose, as a mother in Israel. Any questions? I mean, you have some obvious questions, but any questions you see that you want to ask?
I have a question. I don't know if it was answered last week or not. The formatting in this section is a lot different the way the letters are set up.
Because the verses, the spaces, right. So the reason that the spaces are set up differently is because it's a song. If you go to the book of Exodus, where Moses is singing the song after they cross the Red Sea, it's the same sort of setup. So anytime you see a song, it's going to be set up like that. Okay? That was not addressed last week.
Why would you say I and Devorah in the same thing? Why not just one or the other? Until I rose, I Devorah.
Good. Next question. Good. I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing. It's a good question. I'm saying good.
But
next.
A mother in Israel.
Yeah.
What's that? Referring to? Obviously, it's more than just.
Yeah. So what? Yeah.
What does it mean? So what? Why does it have to say until I, Devorah, and then why is she saying a mother in Israel? Correct. Those are your two questions.
Right.
Good. What else?
And arose is repeated twice. Yeah. Or no?
Well, yeah. Until I, Devorah, rose. And I arose as a mother in Israel.
Okay. Wait. The open city ceased. In Israel they ceased. So what else are we talking about?
Okay. And so you're asking another question. Why is it open city, and then why in Israel they cease? Good? All good questions. Anything else? No?
What does she mean here by they stopped living in unwalled towns?
That's it. That was the same question. Whether they stopped living in unwalled towns? Okay? So now let's go. So, good. Everybody, you're getting good. I like that. Everybody asking questions. It's important. So it says, Rashi answered some of the questions. She said, Chadlu parazon. What does it mean they ceased living in unwalled towns or unwalled cities, whatever? Are ha-parizi she'en lehem choma chadlu miyot yoshvim behem ipnei ha'oivim. The unwalled cities, people stopped living there because of the enemies. V'nesu el arem ivsar, because they're afraid of people. So remember, if you're living in a unwalled city, you're living unprotected. For those who are wondering why I'm yelling, for those listening, we have a lot of noise going on here. I don't know if you hear it, but we do. That's part of construction. Okay, but that's really what it is. They were afraid of the people surrounding them, so they all gathered into fortified cities. And that says ad shekamti kamosh kamti. It's comparable to like that I arose, and so on and so forth. So that he's answering just the grammatical part of that. The Metzudas David says, good. They ceased living in unwalled cities, and again, pachtu l'shevet arei prizi. They were afraid to live in the unwalled cities. V'rak Yisrael chadlu. But it's only talking about the Jews who stopped, who ceased to live in the unwalled cities. But not the non-Jews. Because they weren't afraid of from the Jews from living in the unwalled cities. Because they were the ones on top. And whereas the non-Jews were in the superior position. So they could live in the unwalled cities and not be afraid of the Jews attacking. But the Jews who were Yad Techtona, they were the subjugated, so they were afraid of being attacked, so they would no longer live in the unwalled cities. They would only live in the forested cities. Ad kamti Devorah, wrote until I, Devorah, arose. Wrote Limor Cain haya ad asher kamti ani Devorah. That was until I arose, I, Devorah, because from now, there will be because the salvation that comes upon you will be a complete salvation. Then Vayechrudu Hagoyim, the Galilim, the idol worshippers, the non-Jewish nations, will tremble from Hashem. V'lo yachtulu Yisrael melechet orach, and the Jews will no longer cease to be going on the way, and to live in the unwalled cities. They'll go back, because now we have complete salvation. And then it says, aim, ke'aim hamisaret et banal liyashar darko kenanoch Yisrael. Just as a mother corrects her son to go on the straight path, so I correct Bnei Yisrael so they go on the straight path. So I am like a mother. I arose as a mother in Israel. She's the only one to take this imagery, by the way. Devorah could have claimed anything, but she claims motherhood. This is in face of all those feminists out there. Hey, they may listen, it's actually 6 minutes. All those feminists out there who are always saying that Devorah, nobody ever mentions her. She herself explained her role as a mother in Israel. What does a mother do? Doesn't judge, puts you back on the right path. The judge tells you this way, you have to do this way, you don't do. Okay? The judge is bang. The mother instructs you, that's the word, instructs you on the way to go. So she's saying, I arose as a mother, not as the boss. She herself said that. So this is in the face of all those who want to claim that she was, we don't really talk about her. We do talk about her, but not in those terms that we would talk about like Gidon or anybody else, because she herself separated herself. Okay, so that's what it's saying. That she's a mother, like a mother in Israel. She rose as a mother in Israel because she corrected the people. That's the Metzudas David. Okay, then you have,
Apparently she's the originator of that expression. I mean, that's what we use for our wives and mothers today. That, that they're a mother in Israel. They're guiding their children. They're guiding the household as it were.
Good. It could be that's where we're getting it from. Then also, I just have to find it. Hey, where is it here? Now I can't find it. Oh, it's on Zion, that's why. Oh, here it is. So no. Where is it? Oh, okay. So the Malbim says, again, why were they afraid? Why were they not living in the cities? Because of the distress. Fine. And the Jews in Israel, they ceased. Lomar kigam az. Now this was the other question you asked. Why does it say that they no longer lived in the unwalled cities, and what does it mean in Israel they ceased? Kigam az v'achnisam la'eretz chadu parazon. Also, that when they entered to the land, they ceased from going to the unwalled cities. Chatlu, they also ceased archot. This was again what the Malbim was alluding to, the Metzudas David was alluding to, when he said they ceased going on the roads. That's Israel. In other words, I stopped going in the unwalled cities, but not only that, but I stopped going on the roads. I was afraid. Rak az haya zebech nan yoshev aretz shenizgaru b'Mitzrayim yipnei yirat Yisrael. Abibasara, I'm sorry. It was only with the inhabitants of the Kenites who were they were going because they were afraid of them, so they were staying in their. Right. So they were locked into their when the Kenites were the subjugated ones, if you will. So they were locked into their fortress cities because of the fear of Israel. V'etah haya hefech, but now it's the opposite. Shechadlu parazon v'lo b'Kanani. Now they were ceased to live in the unwalled cities, not the Kanani, only Israel, because the Kanani were now stronger. Same thing we were saying before. Until I, Devorah, arose. All of this continued during the days of Shamgar, who was the previous judge, until she arose. And she arose as the mother in Israel. Yamlit ki'ilu kavar nishbat Israel mehiyot am v'aveta noldu mechadash. It's as if the people stopped from being a nation, and now they were reborn. And she was now considered as the mother who gave birth to this whole nation. By the way, this is also just homiletically, only homiletically. Okay, don't try to ask questions on my homiletics. Okay, but this is homiletically me show you that when somebody adopts a child or just brings up the child, the real parent has abandoned ship or whatever. So now that or abdicated their role. So now the one bringing them up becomes the parent. That's why, by the way, this is actually halacha. Let's say I have the rabbi that I follow, that I ask for everything. I pick a rabbi. I ask him everything, and he's my guide, he's my teacher, so on and so forth. The halacha says that if that Rebbe is about to die, and my earthly father is about to die, now they both can be killed, who do I save?
Earthly father.
Wrong. The rabbi. Even though I have kibbud av v'em, the mitzvah of honoring your parents, I have to save my rabbi first. Why? Because my earthly father brought me into this world, but my rabbi is going to bring me into the next world. So I have to show him more honor, if you will. But what's really going on here, if you think about it from, again, homiletically, from what's going on here is just I was reborn, if you will. And this Rebbe is my parent. So I have to show him respect. By the way, again, homiletically, this could be why when you get married, you call your in-laws mom and dad, and not Sam and Jane. If you do Sam and Jane, it's a lot of disrespect. Even when they want to be called Sam and Jane. Because Sam and Jane, I don't know why, but okay. Dick and Jane, who cares? But it's like I said, I remember that because I asked my father one time, what if I didn't want to call my in-laws mom and dad. I just didn't want to. I had my mother, I had my father, leave me alone. So my father told me, you have to, or it's a lack of respect to us, not to call them by their first name. I said, but what if they don't want it? He said, you don't listen to them. You call them mom and dad. That was it. So, it was the end of it. So that may be where it comes from this concept of when you're now coming in to help me out, to help bring me up, to bring me to the next place. Let's face it, in some families, the father-in-law does pay a couple of years for kolel. So if that's the case, I certainly owe him or her, mother-in-law and father-in-law, some respect. Besides that they gave me my wife, or the other way around, the husband. So you gave me my partner, I have to show respect for that. It could possibly be where this is that concept could possibly come from here. Okay, again, homiletically. I'm not saying halachically. You can ask 1,000 questions on what I'm saying, and I'm sure all these people who are listening to me would ask 1,000 questions. Nonetheless, I'm being homiletic about it, but I think that could certainly be the foundation, seen as one of the foundations for how we can treat our in-laws in such an important role. Because really, who are they? They're nobody to me. In reality, they're not connected to me. In reality, they're nothing of blood. There's no family. I married the daughter. What do I have to do with the other part of the family? I have nothing to do with them. I never see them. I never have to, and thinking about those days. Now, today you have Skype. Now you have the cell phones. You have texting. You have they want to get you. They're going to get you. But in those days, they didn't get you. You wouldn't see your family.
For years, maybe.
Yeah, you wouldn't see that. You're lucky if you saw it. I mean, today I make it to New York once a year with my kids, if we're lucky. To Boston, okay. When my mother was alive, I would make sure we would get in. But my kids haven't seen their aunt and uncle on my side. Oh no, I shouldn't say it. He just saw my uncle. They just saw their uncle, fine. But my sister, they haven't seen in a long time. It's not so easy to make all these trips. Okay? So imagine before the plane, before all this, we're living in different parts of the world, you don't see them. And on top of that, I'm talking about in-laws. I'm not talking about my personal family. Okay? So that's the sort of thing we're talking about. So that's what I'm saying. When somebody brings you up, they have been given rights. And by the way, where do you see this the most? From the Torah? Come on. You see the biggest example of adoption.
Yisro.
No. Before that. Adoption. Where the adopted mother gets to name the child. Come on. Moses. Who named Moses? Wasn't the mother. The mother named him Avigdor. And here comes Bob Paro's daughter and says, Moshe, because I drew you from the water. Thanks a lot, Mom. Okay, but really, that's her name's her kid because she brings them up. So she gets the right to name. And that's, by the way, think about this. The mother calls him a Victor. He has 10 names. But let's go with a Victor. Okay, the mother calls him Victor. A non-Jewish woman calls him Moshe. He's only referred to throughout the entire Torah as Moshe. We know him as Moshe. We name our kids Moshe. Well, not me, but yeah. But think about that. It's an Egyptian name using Hebrew, blah, blah, blah.
Where do we know Avigdor from?
Midrash.
Okay.
Midrash. All these in the Midrash. He had Midrash. Oh, now you're really testing me on that. I don't know. Avigdor is the father of the something.
Father of the generation?
No, Avigdor, Geder, father of the fence. I'm not sure. Okay, but I'm just saying you have that sort of concept. So did that answer everybody's question on that pasuk, by the way? Okay, good. Let's go next. So I'll be so happy when this is over. Okay. Kills my voice after a while. Yivchar Elohim Chadashim. So when they and this is also interesting. I see from this in the English that they're making it as past. Let's look at it literally, okay? Yivchar Elohim Chadashim. They will choose new gods. Az lachem she'arim. Then bread. There will be war in the city. Then there. Oh, that's interesting. Az lachem she'arim. Then there was war in the gates. Magain im Yera'eh v'romach be'arbim elef Yisrael. So was there a shield? Was there a shield seen or a spear when the 40,000 and he's putting in went against Israel? It doesn't make this pasuk does not make sense. Let's understand this, okay? This verse by itself, simply said, is just the words. He will choose new gods. Then war or lachem. Well, lachem they're translating as warrior, because he lachem. Okay, it must be. The war is gates. War gates. Shield, if it will be seen, and spear, and 40,000 in Israel. That's what it literally says. So it literally says, without putting any tricks into this. Okay? So now let's understand what these words actually mean, because it doesn't make sense. So Rashi explains, Keshabachar lo Yisrael Elohim Chadashim. So he changes Yivchar into past. When Israel chose for itself new gods, as whose kakul milchama b'shareim, then they forced war to enter into their gates. Ra'u ata, see now, bitnavdam, in their nadava, in their when they caused to be chosen. If it will be seen in Israel a shield or a sword, that there would be necessary to fight against 40,000 heads of the army, that the non-Jews brought upon them, and all of them caused confusion in that place of the war of the stars of Nachal Kishon, Garfam, and they were being dragged. Sha'arim, I wrote, and again, the Sha'arim is found in your midst of one of these gates of the cities. So they're saying, because you chose, when you chose new gods, that's when you brought the war into your place. And there was no shield against anything. Okay? That's how the simple, that's the way Rashi's looking at this. And also, now the Metzudas David tries to stay with the past, with the future. He says, Ki ka'ashir yivchar Yisrael Elohim chadashim. When it's because when the Jews will choose new gods, as bat milchama ba'arav, then the war comes into his cities. Bavor ha'onesh, because of the sin. V'lo kishemetiv darko, and not when it's improving the roads, his way, and not when he's improving his way. Sorry. Ki halo b'mei Yehoshua, because surely in the days, or it's not in the days of Joshua, Shenemar, where it says ka'arba'im elef, like 40,000 people, avru elavot Yericho, they passed over the plains of Jericho. And when those 40,000 people passed over, was there seen a shield or a spear? Surely it was with a miracle that they conquered Jericho. And not with war, and with shield and with spear. So, by the way, you see the difference in how you're interpreting this?
Yes.
And the only reason they can do that is because of the strange construction of this verse.
Leaves itself pretty wide open.
Right. So because it's the Metzudas David is really trying to stick to the text, to say what's going on in this text. By the way, what we're really hearing from this is, thank you, is that. Okay, there's two truths going on here. I mean, both Rashi and everybody on the page is right. Let's understand that. They all have a valid way of interpreting it. But what's going on is the Metzudas David, who's trying to stick so close to it, even he has to show that there's a major problem going on. Because when they will do this thing, this will happen. And unlike what happened in Joshua, now you're putting in a whole bunch of words here. Unlike what happened in Joshua when they went 40,000, there wasn't anything over there, and so on and so forth. And then finally we come back to our sentence. So really, and I said this many times, I don't know how anybody, Jew, non-Jew, can read this story or any one of the stories without commentaries and understand what's going on. I don't. If I just look at the straight text, I don't. If I go to one of these books with English, no problem. I can understand anything. But if I'm just going to the text. There's no way you're going to get this. No possible way. And you're seeing also that whenever they interpret it, and he said. By the way, Judaica Press, they said like this: when they chose, following Rashi, When they chose new gods, then there was war in the cities. Was there a shield or spear? When the 40,000 went against Israel, and again, he's putting went against Israel. He's deciding that the 40,000 people went against Israel. Where's 40,000 coming from? That's another question. Where's your 40,000? Who are you referring to? At least when you say it the way the Masudas David said, he's saying the 40,000 of Joshua. When they were entering into Israel, when they were taking over Jericho, there was not a shield or spear. So Judaica Press is even giving you an explanation. You understand? It's so amazing. And if, again, those who understand the Hebrew are looking at the sentence saying, what? What are you talking about? But Devorah is using so much information and slamming it into them, and they understood every word she was saying. That's the scary thing. They understood every word. We have to look at it and wonder, who's it referring to? Joshua is referring to the non-Jews attacking us, and what's it mean? And wait, did we choose new gods? Or will we choose new gods? Is this a futuristic thing, a warning to us, or is it a statement? Again, it could be both. And that's why Rashi can say what he's saying. And that's why Masudas David can say what he's saying. She's singing a song, and it has a double entendre. A double entendre, you say? Yeah, okay. Double entendre here. Future and past. What do you want to say?
When a text is this difficult to understand, is that designed, you suppose, to force the reader to examine the text?
Of course. Whenever the text, first of all, everything in the text is written, we're supposed to examine the text because we have to understand it. We have to go back into their minds, their times, and understand what's going on there. And then we can understand. But there's also a lot of imagery that the writer is giving. The writer never meant you to read this and say, oh, that's what happened. These are headlines. Only headlines. And so as headlines, again, I'm going to understand them living in that time period. And if I have the oral tradition, somebody tells me what the song means, I'm going to understand. There's no difference from the songs we sing today versus songs they sang back then. If you listen to any one of our songs today, Bridge Over Troubled Waters, what is you talking about? You're drug induced. Yes, I am. Okay, but we understand that. Okay? But really, think about the songs that the people sing. They're all based upon something that's happening in their lives, and it's limited to their times.
So far off, 2,000 years in the future, somebody looks at thousands of years and looks at those words, and if they don't have our frame of reference.
Correct. Which is why we have to have all these commentaries, because they give us back the frame of reference. So now we look and say, oh, that's what she was talking about. Okay, now we can go on. Without that, you're lost. Throughout the whole entire Tanakh, throughout the whole entire Talmud, there's the oral tradition is the only thing that's going to help you out. And you can't make it up. People love making it up as they go along. You cannot make it up. You have to have some sort of tradition, and it's not good enough to go back to your archaeology or anything else to try to figure out what they say happened, because they don't know any better than you or me sitting in this table. They really don't. They just have a title next to their name, DR, doctor, or PhD, whatever you, PhD at the end, I should say, doctor. That's all. So they made it up as they went along. The best one for that is James Michener. He wrote books making up things as he went. It was unbelievable. It was the Book of Abraham, I think he wrote, something like that. If you look it up, I think it's called the Book of Abraham. And he just starts, I was reading through the book, and I was saying, where does he come up with this stuff? But it was a love story. So he just used some of he saw a bone, and he made up a story about a bone. Okay, it's cool, I don't mind. He's a big seller for that. You have to look at it. I think it's called the Book of Abraham.
But the difference in that versus, let's say, Rashi had such a level of understanding.
Rashi has a tradition, not a level of understanding, a tradition. None of us have a level of understanding.
Okay.
We all have a tradition coming on. And what the brilliance of Rashi was that he knew what we were going to think. And he wrote down what the problems, he gave you the answers. He said, you have the problem with this. Here's your answer. It's a game of Jeopardy now, because we don't know what his problem was. So we read it, and then we say, oh, that's what Rashi says, it must be true, and we continue on. You're not supposed to look at Rashi or anybody else like that. You're supposed to say, what was his problem in the text? The only way you can know the problem in the text is by looking at the text and translating it literally and saying, this doesn't make sense. If it makes sense, so what are you talking to me about? I know what it is. And then he comes up with something, you say, where'd you get that from? Okay? That's what I said. When I give a commentary, I always say, it's homiletical. Let's not get crazy here. Okay, because I don't know. I think I'm saying nice, but who knows if it's really true or not. If Rashi or there's somebody else who said it, I would say they have tradition. And if they, by the way, if they're not getting it from tradition, they will say, it seems according to me. At that point, I can disagree.
And so they will use different terminology in declaring.
Yeah, they will tell you straight out. My Rebbe told me this. I think like this. Blah blah blah. Again, if it's I think, you can think what you want. You're much smarter than me. I'll give you credit for that. But you may not be right, because you're coming with your own thoughts on that. I'm not asking for your own thoughts. I'm asking, what does it mean? So you give me what it means, and then you can say, well, I think you could also say this. Fine, it's no problem. I remember this. I love quoting this one. Rashi writes something about a measure of land, which is referring to. You talked about Kever Rachel. You went to visit the grave of Rachel. So it says in the Torah that it was Kivra Ta'aretz. He went Kivra Ta'aretz. That's what the Hebrew is. So Rashi says it's a measure. It's talking about a measure of land. It was a half day's distance. That's all it was. And he went very short. The Nachmanides says, no way, Rashi's wrong. It's coming from this. He gives a whole explanation. And then saying that Rashi's wrong. Okay? Then he says, I originally wrote this, but now that I live in Israel, I see that the holy Rashi was correct and I was wrong. Because he was going for a whole different thing. But he was willing to admit that Rashi was correct. Now, Rashi never saw the land of Israel. That's a beautiful thing. He had a tradition. He said, Menachem ben Saruk said this. I hold, but based on this, so he says, I hold. That's why Ramban could disagree with him. But Ramban realizes, oh, he's wrong. Okay, I can't do anything about it. So he wrote, I'm wrong. Yeah.
What do you do with the fact that there's disagreement among the sages? How do you come to...
Again, they're both, what they're disagreeing on, okay, so just for the people who didn't hear, when you have disagreements amongst the rabbis, how do you know who's right and wrong? They're both right. That's why I said everybody's right. The question is, what is the simple explanation? That you have to make a decision. What fits best into the text? That's a personal thing. What fits best into the text for the simple understanding? But they're all right. Everybody on the page is right. And that's what I'm saying. Each one of them is right in their own way. But they're all asking different questions. Again, my job is, when I'm reading their answers, is to figure out what bothered them. And once I figure out what bothered them, then the answer is correct.
That's what they're answering.
That's their answering. So the answer is correct. If I have a different question and they happen to answer something, I'd say, oh, they're answering my question. Well, they may be or they may not be. That's something I have to figure out, and then I have to look at their words. Like I said, Rashi, when you're looking at Rashi, he changes the Yivchar to past tense. And so this commentator. And the question is, well, how can you do that? It doesn't make sense how you're doing that. It's clear, it's future tense, so how are you doing that? How you change it to past tense? And you have to figure out what his real question was. Because maybe I'm getting the wrong question. I know I know my question, but I don't know your question. So I have to look and see what he's saying, and I have to go and there's commentaries on Rashi. What's bothering? It's books already. What's bothering Rashi? So what's bothering other people? We have to get into their how they would view the text. And that's what I'm saying. Sometimes it's very difficult, and that's why we always say Rashi was wrong. This guy's wrong. That guy's wrong. It's a lot of arrogance on our part to say they're wrong. If you go back to earlier texts, they hardly ever say the others were wrong. They say we don't understand them. We don't understand where they're coming from. We would suggest this. That's all. That's a different thing. In the Talmud, though, some 1-to-1, you're wrong. Again, today I can tell any of my colleagues, you're wrong. They can watch what I'm saying and then say, you're wrong. And if they can prove themselves to be right, I'm wrong. Yeah.
Even though they're looking at it from a different perspective, coming up with a different question, are they all looking at it from the exact same tradition?
I don't know what that question means.
Is the Masorah the same for
The
everyone?
Masorah is the same. The Masorah is the same. But I have words in front of me. And let's not forget, I have to know, Rashi was very much into this. I need to know what the text means. Not what I can say on a speech. Not what I can, as a rabbi, as a preacher, you want to get up there and you want to impress the people. So you go on to speeches and if you listen to any one of these Michigans on TV, they pick one thing and they go on for 3 hours. And they're telling you what you should do with your wife, kids, and everything else. And they come with the power of Scripture. And they're very impressive. I can't watch for 3 hours. I'm lucky I can do 5 minutes. But nonetheless, they are good. They're good. But they're not using the text to say, we have a problem in the text. Let's really understand what God or the writer of the text, whichever text we're talking about, was really trying to say, was really trying to impart to us. They don't do that. They have an agenda. And they find words to fit their agenda. So Rashi was very concerned with us doing the same Mishigas. So he said, we need to get back to the text. And so that was his mission. Let's get back to the simple understanding of the text. And so others on the page will do the same thing. Metzudas David will do the same thing. Radak will go grammatically. He'll have a different approach. The Ralbag goes on his own ways. Okay, Malbim tries to get shot, but he also likes to do some other things with that. So again, everybody has their agenda with what they were trying to present to the audience. I want to draw you in, so you'll read it more. That's more the Malbim, actually, because he gives you the storyline, the story behind the story. But he really spells it out. Midrashim, we're all about dragging your heart. Because if I can just give him the book. He's a young kid, 15, you said? 14, I never get it right. Okay, 14, he's going to be bored if I just put this in front of him. He'll be bored. So I tell him, you see this? Let me tell you what's really going on. Oh, unbelievable story. Or bring him to Bathsheba, David. Oh, he'll be dragged in if I pull him in the right way. He'll drag in. And he'll actually respect the story. And not say adultery and all this and where everybody throws it away. Think about that. If everybody has their way to try to pull you into the text to make you think, make you care about it. Rashi really wanted you to care about the text, though, and not get lost. And so did Metzudas David. Again, they wanted that. So really, that's where they're coming from. Okay? Everybody's good?
Good.
Oh, yeah, we're so good, we're over. Okay, we got one pasuk. Yay!